anaerobic respiration can occur without oxygen. And when it does that, it still uses glycolysis. And then it does something called fermentation. That's fermentation. Fermentation, the derivative of the word to ferment means to bubble. Anybody make beer, wine, ever made beer, wine, anything like that, or know about it? Yeah, so during fermentation, you have to bottle things or put things in an anaerobic condition. And what you're doing, you use an organism called yeast, which is a facultative anaerobe. If you give yeast oxygen, they will do what we've mentioned here all the time. Okay. But if you prevent oxygen for yeast, they will do anaerobic respiration. And as a byproduct of anaerobic respiration, they produce ethanol, but also carbon dioxide. And carbon dioxide's bubbling, right? So hence the name fermentation, right? To bubble, they ferment. Now, obviously, we call that type of fermentation ethanolic fermentation because the waste product from that is ethanol. Now, do your skeletal muscle cells do ethanolic fermentation? I wish too. I have a feeling I would be the most fit person on the planet if they did. I'd be out there running all day long, right? They don't do ethanolic fermentation at all. In fact, they do something, unfortunately, it burns, and it's called lactic acid fermentation. So rather than the waste product of the fermentation process being ethanol, the waste product here is lactate. And lactate is or lactic acid, right, is the form that we get there. And consequently, the lactate conserves all of the carbon of the breakdown products. No carbon dioxide is produced during lactic acid fermentation. So we're not, our muscle cells aren't bubbling, but the process is still called fermentation. Okay, but there's no ethanol produced in skeletal muscle cells. There's no carbon dioxide produced in skeletal muscle cells either. Yeast are the organisms that do ethanolic fermentation. Obviously, over the years, we've taken advantage of that fermentation process and use it to produce alcohol. There's no alcohol on the planet that, well, actually, I take that back. There are almost all alcohols that people consume as beverages have had ethanolic fermentation done by yeast. Okay, so somewhere in that process of producing them involves putting yeast in. What's different about them is what the carbon source is, right? What's the carbon source for wine? Grape juice, right? Fructose that's in grapes. Okay. What's the carbon source for beer? Maltose, right? In malt, right? We'll put in there. So in vodka,
wheat.
Potatoes are grains, right? In tequila, agave, right? So it's whatever we use as a source of food that we put in there for these yeast to feed on, gives it kind of characteristic flavors, right?